Now, the Senate has frowned at the shutting down of the national grid by organized labor during the nationwide strike. Counting the losses of the two-day strike, Senate President Godswill Akpabio described the impact in certain areas as sacrilegious and an economic sabotage that should never be allowed to happen again. He said a bill should be brought to the National Assembly to settle the issue of the new national minimum wage once and for all.
For instance, shutting down national grid could amount to economic sabotage. Stopping children from taking WAEC means that you have set those children back by 1 year. So there are so many things involved in what is going on. So my personal opinion would be that we thank them for agreeing to go back to the negotiation table. We urge the federal government to expedite action on negotiations in order to arrive at something that is acceptable, at least acceptable to both parties, or something that is reasonably acceptable to both parties. And then immediately thereafter, since the last minimum wage has expired, as an act of parliament, they should immediately send us an executive bill for us to commence work. It is when we are doing our work with the next executive bill that we will now sit in closed session to discuss the modalities of how to stop the situation we found ourselves, so it will not repeat itself.
Senate President Godswill Akpabio there, as we continue to explore the likely impact of an enhanced minimum wage on the economy. We're now being joined by Bala Zakka, a chartered accountant and tax consultant, who will also look at how the classification of electricity tariffs into bands can help to transform that very important sector. Good day, Mr. Zakka, and welcome to Newsday as always.
Thank you.
All right, so based on current negotiated narratives, what would be the impact of increased minimum wage on the economy? Okay, we still haven't arrived at the conclusion of this. We're still engaging, as it were. So what are your thoughts here?
Well, these are my thoughts. As far as minimum wage increase is concerned, we should do the right thing. We shouldn't do what is good, because you can do what is good, but it's not right. Let us do what is right. As we discuss the minimum wage, the government is here, labor is here, and the solution is in the middle. I can tell you that. Let's be very careful so that in 2 or 3 years' time, some parties will not start calling for redenomination of the Nigerian currency. Because I have seen the trend. That's something a lot of people are not watching. As we speak right now, a bag of rice is twice the minimum wage of Nigerians, right? A bag of rice is like 80,000 Nigerian naira, and the minimum wage is like 30,000 Nigerian naira. The simple question is this: what happens if you increase the minimum wage to like 200,000 Nigerian naira, and the bag of rice is twice that figure? So you're talking about a situation where in 4 years' time, the labor leaders at that time will be asking for probably 600,000 Nigerian naira. And before you know what's happening, a bag of rice will get to probably 700,000 Nigerian naira. A liter of diesel or petrol will get to like 5,000 Nigerian naira. Then the next thing that will happen is some people will start telling you that we don't need 5 naira notes. We don't need 10 naira notes. We don't need probably 100 naira notes or 200 naira notes. Through the back door now, there will be a call for redenomination of the Nigerian naira. And that is what we should be careful. If you look at what is happening, I can tell you from my practical experience, whether as a chartered accountant or as an engineer or a chartered tax analyst, they are artificially inflicted. Why can't we fight the forces that made a bag of rice to jump from 8,000 Nigerian naira to now probably 60 or 70,000 Nigerian naira? Remember that we're not suffering from any natural disasters. We have not experienced any worse. But from 1999 to now, you're talking about 25 years, the Nigerian currency got so eroded. Everything about the GDP variables got rubbished. Why can't we fight that? If you chase now, I'm telling you, in probably 10 years' time, the labor leaders at that time will be asking for 2 million as the minimum wage. Then the next thing that is going to happen, a bag of rice will probably get to 100, 200, or 1 million Nigerian naira, that will come for redenomination. And that's why some of us have been monitoring. We may be right, we may be wrong, but it's marching out. I'm telling you, it's marching out. At this level, as a Nigerian, I need to speak out. We said we have to be very careful. We shouldn't deregulate the economy in some areas. We decided, this is my thinking, deregulate everything. Subject Nigerians to torture. You deregulate it. The next thing is devaluate the currency. You weaken Nigerians, whether you're talking about individual or corporate bodies. You weaken Nigeria. The next thing will be redenominate the Nigerian currency. And what will happen, technically, what that simply means is that the 1,000 naira that you see today, or the $1 that you see today, will be worth probably 20 or 30,000 Nigerian naira. And the next thing is open the borders. If you open the borders, everything you produce within will be so expensive that you will rely on imports. And there is every likelihood some people will come as if they are expert and tell you that pull out of OPEC. Because we saw the arguments. If you look at the chronology, before the removal of the subsidy, we got some hints. We started with kerosene. People were saying, be very careful. Don't go that way. But we have those I can best describe, and quote me that I said so. They are economic, not really vampires, but they were propagandists. Technocrats that reduced themselves to propagandists. They said we were losing crude oil through the borders. They came up with all kinds of reasons. They said we were going to have refinery parks. We were going to have investors coming in. Where are the investors? So Nigeria is gradually getting rubbished, and we must never allow that. It's better we say it now, so that when the thing starts falling in, people will remember that some of us discuss with energy journalists like you or economy watchers like you. We must never allow it.
Now, Mr. Zakka, first I have to acknowledge your passion. It is extremely exciting to see this level of passion and commitment to this topic. But I hear you when you say there's a broader problem, which is, the economic symptoms are all there, and we need to face what's happening in the economy
Correct.
squarely, because the minimum wage is a consequence of what's happening in
Correct.
the economy. But the question is that while that fight happens, which we do see, in rhetoric anyway, and there's efforts from CBN and so forth, we're seeing the effort being made to tame inflation, to tame the economy. So what will you say should happen to workers in the meantime who've done nothing to deserve the situation they find themselves in? Should they be suffering while they wait for God knows how many years, or, a miracle, maybe days or months? So the minimum wage, what is your position on that? Because it seems you feel like we shouldn't look at the minimum wage, we should focus on inflation and the economy. So we should focus on the forces. So what happens to the workers while we're waiting for the forces?
The government must provide subsidy. You must provide subsidy, except if there is a hidden agenda. Let me explain. We are on the wrong track, first of all, in the first place. And the economy is heading towards the evil forest. And when you say your one is heading towards the evil forest, that does not mean you will not see green vegetations. But something would get you killed or wounded. It's very clear. And that's why we need to retrace our steps. When we said don't remove subsidy, some of us said if you inflict that wound, what tells you that the wound may not become cancerous? It was inflicted and it is cancerous. Now, and let me tell you, when you talk even about this minimum wage, government needs to reconsider things. There are so many people that are not relying on government to survive. Many are not relying on government to survive. So all they need are the basics. As I speak to you now, basic drinking water is not available. Nobody will tell me that Gowon was a fool when he wanted Nigerians to have drinking water and accommodation. Nobody will tell me that Awolowo was a fool when he wanted Nigerians, regardless of their status, to have basic education. Latif Jakonde did it. So you cannot tell me you inherited an economy that was fairly good and okay, and you felt the other generation was less educated. was less experienced. And look at where you have thrown Nigerian into. And I'm telling you, we have to retrace our steps. It does not matter if you embark on prodigalism and you are on the wrong track. It is in your own interest to come back. It's the same thing that is happening about the energy security, or when you talk about electricity, for instance. Just just reason with me. Just reason with me. Electricity is as important as water in the human system. Electricity is, when you talk about mortal beings, water is very important. Blood is very important. Oxygen is very important. So it's the same thing. Move it to the other side. Look at economic activities of individuals, corporate bodies, and nations. Energy is very important. Electricity is not supposed to be a luxury. It's supposed to be a necessity to drive economic activities. But let me say something now, and people will see why subsidy is very important. If you classify Nigerians into band A, band B, band C, and you're going to provide electricity based on that classification, what makes you think that nursing mother that is in that slump does not deserve to be taken care of? Who told you that the Nigerian president in 10 or 20 or 30 years time will not come from there?
Let me come in here now, which brings me to the next question. Don't you think, because more or less you've already answered it to a large extent, is prioritizing some subscribers over others not discriminatory when it comes to this issue of tariff into bands? And, how can we ever achieve a harmonized generation and distribution of electricity on account of this arrangement of distributing, just having people into bands? Because what you're telling me is that, what you're telling people is that, okay, fine, some people have more power than others, and people are comfortable with that.
I said electricity is as important as oxygen to the mortal being. It's as important as blood. It's important as water to the human system. Anybody who does that, let me tell you, is not who supports that is not only morally bankrupt or suffering from moral insolvency. That person is not a loyal Nigerian. And whoever tries to defend that in accounting, we say is trying to window dress things. And anything about window dressing comes with falsification and is criminal. And let me explain. That slum you are talking about, it is because you decided to classify them as poor people. That's why the hospital in that slum is not going to have the necessary electricity to take care of that pregnant woman, to take care of that baby. Who told you that that baby may not become the president of Nigeria or may not be the right person to fix the economy? Because you classified a particular area as a slum or here or there, that is the reason why some areas will not have electricity to pump drinking water. And if you don't have drinking water, what happens? There will be feces everywhere. There will be economic despair and epidemic. If you classify some areas as people who are rich and people, who told you that that retiree who could not afford to live in a city center and move to the remote areas, who told you he doesn't deserve to have light? So when you look at it from that area, you will know that honestly, those who came up with that suggestions are thinking from somewhere else, not in economic interest, not in public interest, and not in social interest, and not in moral interest. And that's why I say some of them are probably suffering from moral insolvency and moral bankruptcy.
Now, when we advocate for subsidy,
yes,
it's a noble idea, it's a noble concept. But we've seen what subsidy has been turned into over the years.
In the concept of Nigeria,
yes.
If you contextualize it, subsidy is a globally accepted economic pain cushioning concept.
Bringing it home.
Bring it home.
Seen what has happened.
What you're supposed to do is this. It's either we go back into slavery, or we go back and be recolonized, or we fix our economy. Because what is happening is this everywhere. And that was why I said, when you come to the southwestern part of Nigeria, people are saying, Awo was a great person. You see professors, you see Pundits say because of Awo. It was basic subsidy in education. And nobody needed to tell you that the population of Nigeria was going to be rising. And that's why leaders need to think and plan generationally. If you think and plan generationally, you will get things in place. So anybody who tells you about subsidy, he or she doesn't know what's going on. Okay, you remove the subsidy now. Where are the investors you said were going to come? What has happened? Even the drilling
the
campaign.
subsidy is back. The fuel subsidy.
No. Accept the facts first. Accept it, openly accept it that we are on the wrong track and you will get solutions. Because one of the major sources of revenues for Nigeria, especially when you talk about foreign currency, is the oil and gas industry and diaspora remittances. Diaspora remittances are not coming in again. Anybody who tells you diaspora remittances are coming in, bring the person here and let us have the debate. And the reason is because the hostilities are harsh. We have Nigerian matured men who are supposed to go back to the villages. They cannot go back because somebody will call you and say, you retired in the city, that your colleague or age mate has been killed in his farm. He couldn't live where he is. So we have seen it, and let nobody deceive you. Multinationals and Nigerian local investors are still living. Even people who produce simple things as tomato paste, ginger, and the rest, they are moving to neighboring countries because cost of labor, cost of energy is cheap. So we're not wasting this air time. We're trying to tell the government to be very careful. If there are agendas, we need to watch it because, like I said, for me, I monitored the chronology and I came up with this. First thing, remove subsidy, rubbish everything, and we've seen the pains. The next thing, devaluate the currency. Currency has been devaluated. Where are the positive effects? We have beaten the bullets. What have we seen? Then the next thing now, we are seeing all this increase in wages. Why not fight those artificial forces? In the days of Maitasine, I was in Maiduguri then. Maitasine was terrible like Shekau. The government of Nigeria went in and stamped Maitasine out. So if there are reasons why our economy should not move forward, we need to fight it. But anybody that tells you that it may be conscious or unconscious, but the trend is looking disastrous. Don't be surprised tomorrow somebody will tell you all we need to do is denominate the naira, and that will be worse than even official devaluation. We have to be very careful.
Indeed, and part of the agitations by Labour towards the government is that the consideration towards reducing the tariffs in the power sector, and of course, even at this level of the negotiations, there have been insinuations that perhaps Labour is not emphasizing on that. It's been more of the new minimum wage debacle, as it were. But the question is, it's one thing to increase tariffs, but we're not seeing a commensurate increase in the level of power generation itself. So what are the narratives which brought about the proposal to increase tariffs, whereby the infrastructure on ground has not, we haven't actually felt the impacts of this.
We are seeing zero benefit.
So we
are experiencing zero benefit. First of all, when you remove the subsidy, and somebody was telling me they remove subsidy and the states are now having enough naira that is worthless. Naira that is worthless. That's what we are experiencing now. Things are terrible. And let me tell you, the reason why we need to be very honest, as we are speaking, people are watching us from the North Sea. People are watching us from the Americas. People are watching us from the Middle East. Nigerians are not happy. So the real truth is this. The economy is in the wrong direction. The variables of the GDP have been rubbished. Everything about our approach to being the continental hub for Africa has been rubbish. We are nobody consults Nigeria again on how to fix our security, because they know we cannot fix our internal security. So nobody consults us for advice on security again. Nobody consults us on how to fix our energy sector. Nobody consults us on how to fix our oil and gas industry. Nobody consults us on how to shape their education, because we are not needed. And wherever these forces are coming from, they have to be fixed. The truth is this: we are on the wrong track.
Zakka, if I may come in, do you think the last unbundling of NEPA that they did some years back, especially during the Jonathan presidency. Do you think this is also part of the problem, that we don't have active players from, you were talking about people leaving, those that could actually bring in the expertise and everything. What we have is an unbundling and not the true nature of what you would expect foreign investors to come in with their big guns to do something right. Because isn't this part of the problem, that we keep going around the same issues over and over and over again?
I will go with that analogy. We keep creating motion, but we're not moving forward. And even if we are moving backward. And that's what I will tell you. As far as on board, and this is something that is very strange in the context of Nigeria. There are, to me, 4 economic restructuring mechanisms for economies. An economy of a country can be a deregulated economy. You can run a deregulated economy. You can run a commercialized economy. You can run a privatized economy. And you can run a liberalized economy. But you have to contextualize it. If you don't contextualize it, you are going to get it wrong. And I keep telling people, government is about provision of goods and services. That's why an organized government will go into a village or a town. Whether you voted for them or not, government must construct roads. Government must provide hospitals. Government must provide schools. But when you talk about real private sectors are after profit maximization and cost minimization. If somebody goes to your town or village and constructs a refinery, what makes you think he doesn't have a village? The only reason why he or she went to your village to construct a refinery or a food processing facility or whatever or plant is because based on his or her feasibility studies, they are going to maximize profit there. It's not because they love your community more than theirs, but in the process, they will now look for human capital to help them, and that's what you call the labor. But what we keep saying is this, and sometimes when you talk like this, people think you have political ambition. No. Some of us were never politicians yesterday, we are not politicians today, and we will never be politicians tomorrow. So, and nobody should contextualize it and say we are talking about this today. We talked about this more than 20 years ago. We talked about some of these things when a liter of petrol was 87 Nigerian naira. We discussed it here, and we said the government should be careful. They refused. They deregulated the price of kerosene. We saw the disaster. They tried it with aviation fuel. When they did it, we saw what happens. When they did it with diesel, strategic industrial sectors started collapsing. Strategic domestic sectors started collapsing. And strategic commercial sectors started collapsing. Then things became worse and multinationals started leaving. And they now decided to christen it as divestment. It was not correct. They are running away from business climate hostilities because some of those multinationals are in the neighboring countries, especially the oil and gas industry. If you look closer, some of the institutional companies that left Nigeria or are still living, they are in East Africa, some have moved to Europe, some are in Southern America. So who said the oil industry is not profitable? As I speak to you right now, ask anybody except propagandists or praise singers. Drilling campaigns were terrible last year. They are dull today, and they are likely to be bleak next year unless we do something, regardless of what people say. And anybody that wants to argue on that and tie it to the PIA, bring the person here and let us have this discussion.
I want to hang on to the unless we do something because we'll be rounding up soon, and I'd like to just bring at least a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. What are the lowest hanging fruits, in your opinion, as we're talking about solutions? We've done a great job of highlighting all of the things that are going wrong. What's the lowest hanging fruit?
The solutions are very simple and straightforward. That barber that needs to go and make sure he barbs, he doesn't need the government job. Help that barber to afford petrol. That hairdresser that needs to go and dress hair, don't make her to go and buy 10 liters at 7,000 Nigerian naira. She's not going to break even. That man that is in the village that does not need a government job but needs to go, or those youths that we can go back to the farm and you can get probably 1 million more ridges of farms. Help them to stamp out insecurity the way Nigeria stamped out Metasine in the Northeast in the 80s or the rest. Do that. Make sure fertilizer is affordable. And don't tell me that we don't have enough gas to produce fertilizer, because Nigeria is more of a gas nation than an oil nation. From natural gas, you will get ammonia. From ammonia, you will get urea. And from urea, you will get fertilizer. And don't tell me that if you sit down with either the international or local oil companies and there is an understanding and consistency in policies, don't tell me that we cannot boost your drilling campaign. Because all you need is go into exploration. What do they need? If it is security, provide it. If it is tax regime, do something about it. Then drill development wells. In that way, you can now meet up with your OPEC quota. Generate whatever revenues you want in dollars. Then try and make sure you wage against anything that will make you, to lose in terms of forex. But Nigeria has now been reduced. Okay, with all these things they have produced, tell me, where are the investors? And if you're doing well, you don't need to step out of Nigeria. All this stepping out of, we want to go and get investors, are not necessary. If you are doing well, investors are watching right now and they will flood the Nigerian market.
In other words,
and beg you.
In other words, creating the enabling environments. Bala Zakka, Chartered Accountant, Tax Consultant, would like to thank you very much for your thoughts on these issues. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed that.